The morning heat clung to my skin like sorrow clings to an old memory. Unshakable, heavy, I parked Ezra's Buick, still smelling faintly of his cologne, at the curb outside First Mount Zion Baptist. The car had been his pride, the last thing I owned that still bore his fingerprints. I stepped out slowly, one hand steadying myself against the door. My black heels clicked against the pavement, each step echoing louder than it should have. My heart felt like paper soaked in water, fragile, ready to tear. But my head held high. The stained glass windows shimmered with the faces of Dr. King, Rosa, Malcolm, silent witnesses to too many funerals in this neighborhood. This church had buried generations of our people. Now it was Ezra's turn, and here I was, his wife, walking into a building where my name hadn't even been whispered. Still I rise, Maya Angelou once said. I whispered it to myself as I reached the doors. It was a reminder, a prayer, maybe both. Inside, the chill from the AC didn't match the warmth of the voices. Whispers curled like smoke. Eyes darted away when I met them. Cousins I hadn't seen in years suddenly found interest in the ceiling. I scanned the pews. The front row where a wife should sit was already filled. My spot 2 rows back off to the side like an afterthought. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. They didn't even pretend to make space. Darnell strutted in like he owned the place. My eldest, polished, proud, and cold as marble. Right behind him, Serena. Lord, that woman could turn a funeral into a fashion show. Wide-brimmed white hat, pearls that probably cost more than my monthly pension, and a smirk she tried to hide with false sympathy. Renee, my baby girl, trailed them, eyes darting between me and her brother like she was caught in a tug-of-war. Charles Holden found me. He always found me. Old friend from Ezra's Morehouse days, still wearing that same navy suit like it was armor. He offered a nod, not a smile, just a nod heavy with meaning. I watched the way Darnell leaned in to whisper to him, the way Serena kept one hand possessively on Darnell's arm. Renee didn't speak, just kept fiddling with her phone like it held the answers. I remembered when I worked double shifts to pay for Darnell's tuition, chicken grease under my nails, back aching, eyes burning. And Ezra? He held the house down, cooked Sundays like it was sacred. Collard greens, cornbread, sweet tea, we kept it together for them. Now I couldn't even get a front pew. The preacher's voice boomed over the pulpit, but I barely heard the words. My eyes caught the program booklet one of the ushers handed me. Folded neatly, gold script on the cover. I opened it slowly. Under surviving spouse, there it was, someone else's name, not mine. I blinked once, twice, my name gone. I glanced up. Folks were nodding at Serena, whispering how beautiful the service was, how graceful she'd handled everything. One woman even touched her arm and said, "You really did him proud, baby." I smiled, a quiet, sharp little thing, that kind of smile black women learn to wear at birth, one that says nothing and everything all at once. But inside I was taking notes, photographing every insult. They wanted to erase me. At the graveside, the sun beat down, but the cold came from elsewhere. Terence, Renee's husband, stood just behind me. His hand grazed my elbow, casual as sin. Then, with a grin that didn't touch his eyes, he leaned in close. "Just wait," he whispered. 2 words, that's all. Just wait. Now what the hell did that mean? I didn't flinch, didn't even look at him, but I felt it. The shift, not fear. No, fear left me years ago. This was something else, something curious. I'd been poor, I'd been tired, I'd been widowed, but I'd never been blind. After the last clod of dirt hit Ezra's casket, folks drifted toward their cars, toward the fellowship hall, toward potato salad and punch. I stayed just a moment longer. Then, as I turned to leave, Charles caught me. "There'll be a private reading of the will in 3 days," he said quietly. Before I could respond, Serena's voice rang out behind him. "Oh, that won't be necessary. Everything's already been handled. We're just making sure family assets are protected." "We." She meant her and Darnell. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, just nodded like the good little widow they expected. But inside, wheels were turning. I texted Evelyn, a trusted friend from church who kept things tight. Told her to hold on to a certain envelope I'd given her months ago, just in case. When I got home, the house felt hollow. Every frame, every photo of Ezra watched me as I slipped off my shoes. I sat in our living room, sunlight slanting through the blinds, catching dust motes and memories. From my purse, I pulled a lavender handkerchief, embroidered with tiny initials. Ezra had given it to me the night we danced at our 30th anniversary. I smoothed it across my lap, whispered, "You told me to remember who I am." I would, but as I folded that handkerchief, I heard a knock at the door, a knock that would change everything. 3 days after the funeral, the world hadn't changed much outside. Birds still sang, cars still honked, and Atlanta's heat clung to the skin like a second layer. But inside me, something had shifted. I sat quietly in Charles Holden's legal office, the hum of a ceiling fan spinning above and a single clock ticking loud enough to measure every second of betrayal I expected. The walls were lined with law books no one had touched in years, and a faint smell of lemon polish tried too hard to mask the old wood's age. Charles greeted me with a nod and soft voice, nothing performative, just recognition, respect, maybe a little pity. I didn't need the last one. Serena arrived 10 minutes late, swanning in like a news anchor, tight cream suit, high heels clicking with authority she hadn't earned. Darnell trailed behind, his mouth already half open as if rehearsing. Renee, eyes down, same black dress, different day. No one looked at me, not Darnell, not even Renee. But Serena. She caught my eye, tilted her head just enough to say, "You're already out of the picture." I didn't blink. Sometimes people say more with a smirk than they ever could with words. I sat straighter. Before Charles could speak, Serena placed a neat stack of folders on the table and began passing them around like she was chairing a board meeting. "We've already made arrangements moving forward," she said smoothly. "This is a simple update to help transition the estate more efficiently." Darnell nodded like a trained puppet. Renee reached out, then pulled her hand back halfway through. I didn't move, just watched. Charles paused, removed his glasses, and placed them gently on the desk. "With respect, Mrs. Whitmore," he said evenly, "this is Mr. Whitmore's official will reading. I'll be handling it." Serena's mouth tightened, but she nodded once, lips thin. I knew this wasn't about money. It was about something deeper. Erasure, dominance, rewriting the story before I could speak. Charles began to read, the usual legal cadence, accounts, pensions, savings, divided evenly among the children. Serena looked like she'd just been crowned queen of a tiny kingdom. I remembered Ezra's voice, his last real words to me. "Trust me, I left it in the right hands." Serena's foot tapped under the table just a little too fast. Then Charles cleared his throat again. "As for the property located at 1812 Ashmont Street," everyone leaned forward. That house was the last anchor left. "I hereby leave the full ownership and rights to my wife, Marv Whitmore, with no stipulations. This home is hers entirely." Serena's face dropped like glassware hitting concrete. Darnell's smile flattened into nothing. I didn't smile, just folded my hands, looked out the window, and thought, "You thought I was invisible. Charles wasn't done." "There is a no contest clause," he said. "Any party who contests this will forfeit their portion of the estate." The silence that followed was colder than any winter I'd lived through. Darnell started to speak, voice cracking. Mama, this. Serena cut him off. This is manipulation. That clause isn't right. Ezra wouldn't. I looked straight at her. Venice wasn't your concern at the funeral. Why now? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. She stood up so fast her chair screeched, snatched her purse like it owed her money, and stormed out. Darnell followed like a shadow with no light to guide it. Only Renee stayed. Charles handed me an envelope, quiet as ever. Your husband left this for you, said it was personal. I opened it as the door clicked shut. His handwriting was shaky but still familiar. I know they'll try to take everything, but this home, this is yours. You made it what it is. I sat there a moment longer, letter in hand, feeling something I hadn't felt in days, not joy, not anger, just seen. Walking out of the office, the sun met my face, and for the first time in a while I didn't flinch. But as I reached the car, a voice cut through the air behind me. Don't get too comfortable. Serena, same pearls, same poison, and just like that, the next battle had already begun. I woke that morning to silence heavier than any praise. The house was dim, the curtains drawn, and not one message blinked on my phone. No happy birthday, Mum, no thinking of you, nothing. I stood in the hallway, shoulders tight, listening to my own heartbeat muttering, your name is fading. I stepped into the kitchen, pressed my hand to the counter, tasting the ghosts of past birthdays. Ezra leaving a rose on my pillow, Renee laughing as she blew a single candle, Darnell's proud eyes on me. Now, nothing. I asked myself, how did I go from being the glue to being forgotten? Still, the habit of love held me. I lit the stove, set a skillet with grease well seasoned, tossed greens with garlic. I half expected someone to walk in, call me Mama, bring me joy, but the door stayed closed. I measured rice in a bowl, folded cloth napkins, poured a glass of wine even though my dinner would be for one. I spoke softly into the empty room. You were always a home to me. Dinner was quiet. I sat at the table, a single candle flickering, my plate small, no conversation but the hum of the refrigerator. I thought about how Serena once bitched because she thought I had given her a smaller slice of cake during her 16th birthday. Why can't she be generous for once? She'd hissed through lips painted cherry red. That memory stung. Did I create them like this? Did I teach them to be hungry for more than I could give? Some wounds don't bleed out loud. They whisper through birthdays you spend alone. I stood to wash dishes, hands trembling. That's when the landline rang, my old house phone, not the cell I barely use. My throat closed. I stared at it, heart stalling. Then I answered. Renee's voice cracked through the speaker. She thought I was out of earshot. She's old, and honestly, she won't fight, she said, her tone flat. Then she paused, dropped her voice. Serena knows that. We've got to move before she changes the deed. I saw the letter from Dad. My chest clenched. Letter from Dad. Move before she changes the deed. Betrayal had a voice, and here it was within my own blood. I froze. Renee's voice trailed off. She hung up without apology. In that silence, the world shifted. The betrayal that stung most was this. She thought me too weak to defend myself. I stared at the handset, taste sour on my tongue. I dropped it into its cradle, spit out a bitter laugh. Did she think I'd crumble? I walked to my bedroom, hands shaking, heart cracked open. I pulled out old photos, weddings, birthdays, vacations. I placed them on the bed. One by one I tore them. A picture of Ezra and me laughing in Savannah, one of Darnell at college, one of Renee smiling behind us. Not out of anger, but reclaiming them. You don't get to sit on my shelves and plot behind my back. For the first time in years, I let anger inside me. Not wild, but a clarity. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, searched Widow Rights Estate, Contest Law, Georgia. I read about spousal rights, no contest clauses, elder protection statutes. Silence isn't dignity if it lets others rob you. I printed the article, taped it to my mirror. It stared back at me in block letters. That's going to be my mantra, my shield. Then came the knock. I rose from the desk, calm settling over me like water. At the door stood Serena, holding a pie. Apple, warm, smells like pretense. The former praise meeting room smelled of stale hymnals and waxed floors. I walked the aisle slowly, scanning the guest book at the entrance. My name should have been under wife of the late Mr. Whitmore, but it wasn't there. Someone erased it. The usher looked away when I stared at his blank line. His eyes flickered hesitation. I kept my voice steady. I nodded at nothing, walked in. Silence hung heavy. 2 days had passed since the will reading, yet each morning felt like waking deeper into a trap. I joined the midweek prayer gathering to steady my soul. The sermon's words echoed in my head. God sees everything, but here on earth some saw nothing. I glanced back at the empty line in that guest book. I felt a pinch, first flash of indignation under grief. The leader called on Darnell to speak. He stepped up, cleared his throat, and addressed the congregation. We must thank Serena for stepping in, guiding our family during this transition. Her leadership is a gift. His nod toward her was soft. She smiled. That's when I realized I was now optional. I remained still, lips closed. Around me murmurs rose. That's disrespect, I heard someone whisper. I caught Darnell's eyes. They avoided mine. Serena's nod confirmed my fear. They were erasing me. Betrayal felt sharper than grief. Afterwards, I stayed near the memorial board in the fellowship hall. Rows of plaques listed names of members who'd served, contributed, ushered. I scanned for Marv Whitmore, not found, instead, in loving memory of Serena Blackwood and Darnell Whitmore. That line glowed under the light. No mention of me. My heart sank, then hardened. I followed the plaques to the back. In the janitor's closet, crumpled and torn, was the old plaque bearing my name. Faded letters, nearly illegible. Someone discarded it like trash. I confronted the janitor before he could close the door. He looked frightened. Yes, they told me to remove it. Serena's assistant called. He said it like he swallowed something bitter. I pressed. Who gave the order? He shook his head. I wasn't told a name. Rage simmered inside me. They want me invisible. Fine, I will unveil what they hide. I left the church faster than I came. At home I made a pile. Old plaque fragment, letters, program booklets, photos, evidence. I lit a lamp, sat at the table, and wrote on a plain sheet. You can erase my name, but who erased your conscience? That note felt heavy and honest. I practiced what I'd say Sunday in my head. I'd bring the fragment to show the board, let the blind see. I phoned Jasper Beaumont. His voice crackled reassurance. They'll try to discredit you. He warned, don't let that stop you. I replied simply, truth is my only armor. Then I texted Talia. Bring our old family photo tomorrow. Stand with me. My hands trembled, but purpose steadied me. Late that night, silence pressed against me. I crossed to the front porch. A sealed envelope lay on the welcome mat. I picked it up, hands steady. Inside was a photo. The new plaque in place, and in the corner the faint script. Serena Blackwood nearly hidden, their statement, their arrogance, their playing in the dark. Tomorrow I bring light. I got home from church that Sunday with my body tired but my mind wide awake. I set my purse down slow, like I didn't want the silence to notice me coming in. The broken plaque piece sat on the corner shelf, exactly where I left it. I picked it up again, rubbed my thumb across the jagged edge. You could still see part of my name beneath the torn laminate. The last few letters of Whitmore, like someone had tried to scrub me off the face of time, but couldn't finish the job. I could still hear my husband's voice in my head, soft and sure. They'll try to erase you, but I left proof. He always had a way of knowing, even before I did. I set the piece down gently like it could still bleed. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a paintbrush, one hand steady, the other remembering. It was the anniversary of the day we signed the deed to this house. 34 years back, we didn't have much, but that front porch swing and the sound of rain on the roof, it was ours. I painted a ceramic plate with our initials, the year we moved in, and a line from one of his favorite songs. This house built us too. I wrapped it in blue tissue and slipped it into a small box. My plan was simple. Give it to Darnell and Talia. Quiet, personal, a little sign that this home still lived in them, even with him gone. But Serena showed up uninvited. She walked in like she had a key to everything, wearing perfume, loud enough to announce her before she spoke. Saw the box before I could tuck it away. Next thing I know, she's holding it high in front of the guests she brought with her, saying, I wanted to share this new family heirloom, honouring Mom and Dad's legacy. Everyone clapped, even Darnell. He looked proud. I didn't move, I just stood there, like background furniture. My throat was dry, but not from shock, from restraint. You could steal a plate, but you can't steal memory, and you surely can't fake sentiment. I cleaned up after they left. No one thanked me. No one asked where the plate came from. It sat on Serena's lap the whole evening, like it was hers all along. Next morning, I got a text from the church office. Your name has been removed from the founding donors list, per request. I didn't even bother replying. I just drove down to the church. The plaque display was different. I could tell before I got out of the car. I walked in slow, and there it was, a new label, shiny and freshly screwed in. Serena Whitmore, legacy donor. My name gone, peeled off like it never existed. I touched the space where mine had been. It was smooth, too smooth. Fresh work. In that moment, I didn't cry. I memorized. I drove to Serena's later that afternoon. She opened the door with that practiced grin, the kind that says, I won again. She held the plate. I was thinking, she said, maybe we should rededicate this at next Sunday's service. Something symbolic, you know? I let her speak. Her words curled and twisted like vines. When she finished, I looked her square in the face. You took what wasn't yours, I said gently, but you can't erase what's in their hearts. Her eyes flinched, just a little, but it was enough. I turned and walked off her porch like I owned every step of it. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I didn't wave, didn't need to. Back home, I sat down and wrote it all out. Every inconsistency, every time my name was scratched out, or hers scribbled in. I called Jasper, told him I'd need copies of the donor registry. He said already on it. Then I rang Talia. Go through the old albums, I said. I need photos, letters, anything with my name tied to that church. She didn't ask why. She just said, okay, Mama. And I texted Renee. Stay close at the service Sunday. Be ready. I wasn't just preparing for the storm. I was writing the weather report. I drafted a quiet email to the board, not accusing, just stating. I printed my statement for Sunday, folded it neatly. The broken plaque piece I slipped into an envelope and wrote across the front. To Mr. Holden, do not open until Sunday. I set it on the side table beside my bed. That night something stirred me, could have been the wind or intuition. I reached out for the envelope. Gone, I sat up straight, and in the stillness I heard her voice in my head like a whisper soaked in arrogance. I told you just to wait. Service started with soft hymns drifting through the sanctuary. I stepped in, head held, soul wound tight. Congregants shifted in their seats as I passed. Some looked away, others offered quick nods. None said my name. The pastor, mid-sermon, paused to acknowledge Ms. Serena Whitmore as a major donor, thanking her generosity. That name on his lips stung me sharply. Another erasure. I clutched the commemorative plate hidden in my bag, the proof of pride Serena tried to steal. Hurt pulsed quietly, but under it, resolve bubbled. Then came the misnaming. During announcements, someone introduced me. Mrs. Whitmore's guest. A gasp spread like cold wind through the pews. My pulse thundered. I rose, voice calm but firm. I am Marv Whitmore, widow of Mr. Whitmore. Silence snapped. The eyes in the room flicked. Darnell's face trembled. Serena's smile wavered. I claimed space spoken. The pivot changed everything. Later, Serena was called forward to present the plate. She held it like a trophy, delivered a speech full of praise, none of which mentioned me. When she reached to hand it over, I stepped forward. "You don't get to rebrand my history," I said, voice steady. The crowd froze. Serena's lips tightened and her eyes stung with a flicker of fear. She was forced to let go. Renee leaned close, whispering, "They changed your name in the program again." Talia squeezed my hand. Jasper's eyes caught mine. A nod, small but steady. Around us, murmurs curved upward, curiosity turning into support. For a moment, I felt their weight against my back. After service, I cornered board members with a faded copy of the original donor list, my name clearly printed. I said, "You may strike my name, but you can't strike my truth." Some shifted uneasily. Serena retreated. A few close friends offered soft applause from the pews. I walked out, calm dignity not lost. At home, I locked the plate in a small wooden box. I gathered all fragments, program errors, plaque pieces, donor lists. I wrote sealed letters to local papers detailing the erasures. I texted Serena's assistant. "You have one more chance to make things right." Late that night, a soft knock tapped my window. I peered through the blinds. Serena's silhouette held an unmarked envelope. I stiffened. The war was far from over. I woke up before the sun. Couldn't sleep long anyway. After what happened yesterday, the weight in my chest hadn't let up. I sat on the edge of the bed, fingers brushing against the lavender handkerchief, tied around my neck, same one my husband gave me before our 30th anniversary. That knot wasn't just decoration anymore, it meant something now. I looked out the window and noticed the mailman hesitate at my gate. Two neighbors who never used to glance twice now waved awkwardly from across the street. Something had shifted. I replayed Sunday's service in my head. The way pastor's voice rose when he said Serena's name. The silence when I corrected mine. The way Darnell couldn't look me in the eye. I didn't want applause. I wanted truth. I wanted history put back in place. Mid-morning, I pulled a small wooden frame from my dresser drawer. Inside was a photo of me and Charles, standing on the front porch the day we paid off the house. I had it copied, printed, and set it inside a pale blue mat. On the back, I wrote, "This is my legacy, not yours." I plan to present it during next week's service. Not loud, not bitter, just a reminder, to them and to myself. I rehearsed in the mirror, lips barely moving. "This is who I am." I knew Serena would try to interrupt, twist it again, make it about her, but not this time. By early afternoon, I was tidying up the living room when I heard a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the curtain. Jasper Beaumont stood there, folder in hand. No smile, just that steady look he wore when things got serious. "Thought you might want to see this," he said once I let him in. Inside the folder were copies of the original church donor lists, dedication programs from years back, and pictures of the old plaques, with my name clearly printed. At the bottom, a notarized letter from the church archivist. Serena had offered him money to update outdated files. My heart didn't race, it thudded like a slow, deep drum. This is enough, I whispered. Jasper nodded. We need to do it smart, not with fire, with fact. We sat at my kitchen table and sketched it all out. First, I'd present the photo as a quiet offering. Then Jasper would step forward with the documents. Then a request for a moment of silence. For truth, silence too long. I called Renee, told her to sit close Sunday. Told Talia to hold my hand the whole time if she had to. I sent a message to the church board. I will speak in front of all, be ready. That night, as I backed out the driveway, Serena's SUV pulled halfway into the street, blocking my exit. She didn't get out, just stared. I reversed, drove the long way around, didn't flinch, didn't let her see me sweat. Sunday morning came and the sanctuary felt heavier than usual. Ushers whispered. Doors were locked early. Renee whispered, "Something's off." I nodded, kept my frame tucked under my coat. When the pastor invited me up, I walked with slow steps. No trembling, I held up the photo without words. Then Jasper stepped beside me and began to speak. Quiet, direct, the papers made their way down each row. Murmurs, gasps. Even the back pew folks leaned forward. I looked towards Serena. Her smile was gone, her mouth slightly open, hands folded too tightly. Then I said, "You've tried to silence me, but I was never silent." It wasn't loud applause that followed, just a low rising hum of voices, like wind starting to change direction. As we stepped off the podium, Serena's assistant brushed past me and slipped a note in my hand. "Check the files after service. You'll regret this." I didn't blink. The sanctuary was packed tighter than a summer Sunday. I could feel whispers roll through the rows. She's going to say something. What will she show? Serena entered ahead of me, dressed perfectly, hair glossy, smile fixed. She strode past, greeting faces that had once ignored me. I walked in last, framed photo in one hand, sealed documents held like armor in the other. Heads turned, eyes widened, the air thrummed with expectation. The pastor paused mid-announcement and looked at me. "We would like Mrs. Whitmore to share with us today." I nodded, stepped forward. I held the framed photo up, a quiet gesture of claim. The room drew in its breath. Then I motioned to Jasper beside me. He stepped forward, papers in hand. He cleared his throat and read aloud the original clause from Ezra's will. "The house at 1812 Ashmont Street goes entirely to me with the no contest clause intact." Shock rippled, Serena's face paled, some folks gasped, murmurs pulsed. I didn't speak yet, I simply stood, letting the truth echo. After service, we moved to a back room for the board meeting. Serena demanded the reading be rescinded. The board chair hesitated. Charles Holden confirmed everything. Original will, legal authenticity, no contest clause binding. Some board members shifted. The faces of longtime church elders tightened. I looked at them and said, "I asked for respect, not a fight, but I will not be erased." The room hung on it. Serena's mask cracked. Darnell cornered in silence. The tide started turning. Then the vote came. They removed Serena from any role overseeing the estate. No fiduciary power, no decision authority. She stood there, gaped, silent. Renee in the corner gave me a slight nod. I accepted it quietly. No gloat, just acknowledgement. I was back where I belonged. Inside, something cold broke. Triumph coiled in my chest. Later, at home, I sat on my veranda. The evening air smelled of magnolias and distant thunder. I cradled the framed photo, tears leaking, pride bleeding. My phone buzzed, a call from Serena, her voice brittle. "This is not over." I replied gently, "It never will be if you keep picking fights." I hung up. I looked at that photo, me, Ezra, what we built, what they tried to dismantle. I whispered, "You used to say I was strong because I stood. Now I stand because I am strong." I typed emails attaching the will and board vote results. I arranged a small gathering at the church, community members, faithful neighbours, to rebuild trust. I told Talia over the phone, "We'll not just survive, we'll remember why we matter." Lightning cracked in the distance. That night, solitude thickened. I heard soft steps on the porch. Heart steady, I peeked through the window. Serena stood there, silhouette lit by moonlight, holding a lamp and a folder of papers. Her posture was cautious, uncertain. She came for the fight. I prepared for the reckoning. I woke early, before dawn cracked the sky. The house was quiet. I stepped onto the porch, mug of tea warm in my hands. The air held the faint scent of jasmine. I listened to the gospel station through the old radio on the kitchen table. The DJ's voice soft, saying, "The Lord sees what's done in the dark." I closed my eyes, feeling a calm settle inside me. Not joy, but a peace deeper. A bird nested by the windowsill, tiny and steady. I watched it. A symbol. Life continues. My mother used to say, "Baby, don't build your peace on someone else's brokenness." I whispered that back to myself. Later, Talia knocked gently on the bedroom door, carrying a worn envelope. It was thick, folded with care, labeled "For my queen." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter in Ezra's steadier handwriting. Written before the cancer stole his voice, he spoke of watching Serena and Darnell's ambition grow, of knowing the risks. He said he trusted me to protect their home. "Let them play games, baby. You already won," were his final words. My throat tightened. Tears fell, not from pain but from release, validation at last. I called Renee, Jasper, neighbours, to a Sunday brunch. In the warm kitchen, we laughed, swapped stories, toasted with iced tea to endurance. We spoke of resilience. I handed Jasper a small keychain engraved MJB, my initials and that quiet phrase I carried, my justice battle. Renee looked at me, says, "You taught us what a backbone looks like." I smiled, soft, grateful. That afternoon we gathered at the church's community hall. I stood before familiar faces. My speech echoed things I'd once thought in whispers. Silence isn't submission, it's strategy. I lifted that framed photo. I asked for and got a moment of silence for those whose names were erased unfairly. Applause followed, not loud, but real. Pastor prayed over our healing. The room felt right. Night fell. Back at home, Talia asked if we could take mother-daughter photos. I nodded. We stepped out under a garden lamp. I held her close. She said, "Let me carry your strength forward, Mom." I replied, "Only if you promise to add your own to it." We laughed quietly, tears in our eyes. Later, I walked through the garden. I said under my breath, "Some folks spend their lives planting seeds of doubt. I choose to plant legacy." I placed Ezra's letter inside my Bible. I turned and looked at the setting sun. A neighbor called from the fence, "Miss Marv, you coming to the next meeting?" I smiled and said, "I will, but this time I'll be sitting at the head of the table."